unfolded about these four women who had this bond. And I really started out wanting to write like a urban Sex in the City, some kind of glimpse into what it's like to be a successful sister in this day and age. And then, the pandemic happened and I saw all the Black Lives Matter situation playing out. And for the first time, it seemed like we were having real conversations about what it is to just be Black and exist in this country. And I realized that it would be a little unrealistic to write a story about four Black women trying to find love in different ways without exploring how we all have to worry about our sons, brothers, uncles, fathers when they step outside the door. So.
Yes, that is true.
Yeah.
And I think the pandemic at that time was like in your face about a lot of stuff. And people were choosing themselves first instead of that job because they were seeing so much they were missing from not being at that job or being taught by that job.
Right.
Yeah.
Precisely that. Yeah. Yeah.
So we all have, my name is Shan, that's Casey, that's Kiki. So we were once strangers and we ended up working at the same place. And so that's how we became friends.
Oh, okay.
And so we
felt that must have been a fun workplace, first of all.
It was.
It was.
I'm just sitting here trying to picture that. I'm wondering how much work got done down there, But I see you took it outside of the workplace. Now you got your own situation. And
right.
Dope.
So we was like, we need to start reading more. And then we was like, we should do like a book club and we'll pick a book and read it. So this is the 14th book. And it was Kiki's pick.
Thank you, Kiki.
You're welcome.
And so we were like, we're going to read this book. And so every time we have a book, I go through like the research of the author for the first episode, and then we get into the book. And so when I started researching, I was like, does she have an Instagram? Does she have this? And so when I found out, I was like, well, let me reach out. You're the first person to ever agree to like even come on the show or talk about the book or anything. And we appreciate it because
I find that so surprising. You know why? Because even after 11 books in, and I think this is where with any art, when you get used to the audience, right, you can start to take them for granted. And I never want to get that comfortable. Like, it's so important to me. The thing I miss, I'm all for the digital age. Everybody's electronically downloading books nowadays. I miss the old days when we used to go pull up to a bookstore and readers would come in and, you could really converse and learn what they liked about the story, what they didn't like, what made sense, what made them cry. And I miss those days. So when I get the opportunity to talk to especially groups of readers like this, where there's more than one of you at a time, I live for it. So I'm actually surprised that you haven't had more authors, and we'll see if we could change that going forward.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So we have different questions to ask you. And so we're gonna basically do like a whole, tag team.
All right.
But
I'm ready.
Casey put me on to all of your previous episodes and videos that you've done. So we've been getting to know you without you being around.
Okay.
So we want to.
Because my thing was, I didn't want to ask you something you already said.
That.
Okay. I like that. You did your homework, Casey.
Yeah.
I like that.
And then I also found out that you were Gemini. Now, are you a May Gemini or a June Gemini?
I'm a June Gemini. What does that mean?
I'm a June Gemini, and Chantal's a June Gemini.
Yes.
What day?
Dang. I'm June 8th.
I'm the 7th.
I'm the 4th.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
What are you?
I'm the 4th.
The 4th, the 7th, and the 8th. And Gemini season over here. All right, so Kiki, what's your sign?
I'm an Aquarius.
All right, we mesh with you.
Yes.
Aquarius, this is all good right here.
Yeah.
Yes, I am a proud Gemini. In fact, when I first started out writing, I wrote all my life, but my first introduction to an audience was through poetry. And my poetry stage name on the New York City poetry circuit was Gemini.
Come on.
Yeah.
So, side note, it doesn't have anything to do with writing, but my own girl, she was a stripper. Her name was Gemini because she's a Gemini too.
It's versatile. It could mean whatever you want it to be. You know? I love it.
So, because it's Kiki's pick, I want her to do her question first, and then
all right.
Okay. So I want to know what kind of like headspace were you in when you wrote the book? Like, were you in a relationship? Were you healing from something? Any troubles in your friendships that you were going through? Like, what was going on in your life when you was writing the book?
Very good question. All right, I like the way this is going already. I was really on. I am a single Black female, so let's start there, right? I really wanted to write about my own experience dating at this age. I'm 48, in a city like New York City, and I pulled a lot from my female friends, whether they're married or, for instance, I have one friend in particular who is single and doesn't have children, and she always saw herself as married with children. And she and I were out to dinner one night having a conversation about, the relationships we were in and the dead ends we were hitting. And she said that she, much like Coco, this is where this came from, that she's only ever dated Black men, and she doesn't find any other ethnicity even attractive. She doesn't like the way they smell, the way they dress, the way they talk. None of it.
That sounds like my sister now.
And I just found that so intriguing for two reasons. The first thing I did was challenge her. I said, well, what if God packages him in an Indian uniform or an Asian uniform? Would you deny it just because of the, the shell case? And she said, God wouldn't do that to her. The second thing I found interesting was I never or very rarely heard a Black man say, I don't find any other race of women attractive. So I found it interesting that she had pledged allegiance to a group that hasn't pledged allegiance to us. And so I just, I found that interesting. And rather than judge her for it, I just, based the character off of that. And I imagined her dating a guy like Ziggy. So that's where like Coco's character came from. I identify most with Ivy's character. So that's why I started the story off with Ivy. Not that I'm dating anyone incarcerated at this point in my life, but the past. Let's just say I've been on some of those visits. So I definitely drew from prior experiences, but at this stage in my life, I'm single, my sons are grown, and they're like pit bulls, they watch every move and they block every attempt. And so I wanted to, talk about what it would be like to, and I also find it interesting that as I climb in tax bracket, the brothers in my tax bracket are, first of all, not many, and they don't necessarily prefer my hue. So then the option is to date beneath my tax bracket. So that's where Ivy's relationship with James kind of comes from. And her friends, questioning, are you sure you want to date somebody who only makes this when you're making that?
Right.
Most of my stories, I tend to get intrigued by a topic. And with single Black female, it was dating as a Black woman in America, period.
Okay.
And I just, use these characters to explore those things. Nikki's character for me represented my daughter's generation. I was a teen mom. So my daughter's only 15 years younger than me. But that's a huge gap. Like she's a city girl, and I'm from the Mary J. Blige generation. But the city girls are winning in their own way. So, Nikki is unapologetically twerking on the red carpet, getting her coin, influencing and wheeling and dealing. And I wanted to tap into that as well. So
nice.
Okay. The city girls are up.
Yes, they
are.
City girls way up.
Right.
Way up.
Yes, I ain't mad at it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But back to what you said with when women get a certain level of whether it's professionalism or this is my career, and they have to pick from like the few bunch of Black men that they are. Yeah. And some men still have the mindset like, if I get this amount of money, I have to get this type of woman.
Exactly.
A lot of people on the outside look at women with power and a means to do for herself as, oh, she thinks she's better than us, or she thinks we're not good. It's not that. Definitely. But it's kind of like, if I put in all this work for me to be a great woman for me, and I feel like I deserve a great man, why do I have to go to the dollar store and look for something that's not broken?
Right. It's
what I can say though. Yes. What I can say though, for men, it's an intimidation factor, and men want to be needed and not wanted. And if you dating somebody that can do for themselves, it's like, you don't need me. It's what you with me for.
I do need other things.
Yeah.
I need to be held at night. I need my car fixed. I need, somebody to help me carry these goods. Everything is not a financial need, but you're right, Casey. There's so many men that tie their financial worth
to everything.
Worth as a man, and those are two totally different things. Yeah.
Casey, it's your go. We go treat you
like my go?
A Oreo in the middle.
I like being in the middle.
Okay.
So you kind of already touched on it with this book in Single Flat Female about how you did the character development. You based it on yourself and your friends, your daughter, people around you.
Right.
Do you do that with all your books? And if you don't, how do you kind of write your book? Do you develop the situation first, or you develop the character first and then go around that character with the situation, or vice versa?
It usually starts for me with a topic. So for instance, with White Lines, which is to date my favorite story of all the ones I've written, it was 2004, and I knew a woman who was struggling with crack addiction. And I remember originally just being intrigued by her. She was such a pretty girl. And when she was on the right track, she just radiated. And then you would see her during her struggle. It was a whole nother story, I just was intrigued by her. Every time I saw her, I just would, go home thinking like, who's still smoking crack? In 2000, like this, the word is out, like, so I'll admit that it started from a place of, dare I say, judgment, but then I really wanted to understand, like, why is she doing that? She's so pretty. Like, if she could just snap out of it, she could get her life on track. And so for me, it usually starts with a topic. So I started to want to write about her. And I did. I would go to her apartment and interview her at length about how she started on drugs, why it kept calling her back. And then I decided to go and tell the drug game from the dealer's perspective, and how a little boy who wanted to be a fireman winds up hugging the block. So it's the drug game from those two different perspectives. So it usually starts with the topic, and then I develop characters who are going to represent what it is I want to say. And I do everything, Casey, from I name them, I picture them, like in my mind, and I may not always convey it right, because I try not to make up your mind for you. I don't like faces on the cover, because I want you to decide what they look like, but I try to lead you there. So with Ivy, when I was developing her, I wanted Jill Scott, a voluptuous sister with curves and, bad bitch energy. And I decide their birthday, are they left-handed or right-handed? What are they afraid of? What do they want out of life? And that kind of depth helps them become real to me, like imaginary friends. And from there, it's kind of easy. Then you get to play with them. Once you mold them and create them, then you put them in the situations that, feel right for the story. And sometimes it's easier than others.
So for lack of a better term, the characters become like your paper dolls.
Absolutely. Oh, I love paper dolls as a girl. You just triggered a memory for me. I used to love them things. You would cut out little outfits all the time. Yes, that's exactly what they're like for me. Yes.
Okay.
Nice. Okay.
That Casey, don't sue me.
Okay. I want 10%.
You got it.
So my question is, how long did it take you to feel like you were ready to publish after you wrote your first book?
Oh, that's a good question too. Y'all are good at this. Okay. I didn't know I was ready. I never knew I was ready. You know, writing for me was something I did all through my life as a coping mechanism. You know, like it was kind of like therapy for me. If I was excited about something, I would go home and write an essay. Or if I was angry about something, I'd write a short story and I'd kill off the characters I didn't like, you know. Poetry, writing songs, that was like all through childhood. Yeah. And then someone challenged me to get up on stage and do poetry. And I did that. And I did this poem called The Hair I Wear. Because at the time, brothers were giving sisters a hard time about wigs and weaves. And I was saying, cut it out. You know, so in the poem, I went in and the sisters in the audience stood up and applauded. I got a standing ovation. And as I came off stage, this lady said, you can really write, like you should write a book. It's one of those things, like, you know how there are astronauts in the world, but we don't know any. I don't know any astronauts. Right. But I know somebody does that for a living. Writing was like that in my mind. Like I figured there are writers in the world, but I don't know any. Can you really write and make a living off of it? So I went home based off that woman's suggestion. God bless her, wherever she is. I couldn't pick her out of a lineup today. But it's what that taught me is it's always good if you feel like somebody's outfit is fly, or they dance really well, or they sing. Tell them, plant that seed, because you never know where that can go. That lady probably never knew that she said that to me. It literally sparked a flame in my mind. I went home that night and began my first novel, Black. Damn. I didn't know I had what it took, because it's one thing when your friends hype you up and say, yeah, you're good. It's another thing when you get on stage and this particular audience likes you. But I didn't know if I had what it took to write in this format, but I knew I had read The Coldest Winter Ever, and I felt like I could do something like that. And I had read Asha Bandel, is one of my favorite writers. She wrote The Prisoner's Wife. And that book it felt like poetry, but it was a memoir. It was just, now I wanted to figure out what my literary voice was like. And just on a whim, I started looking at like the back covers of books and seeing the address of the publishing company. And I sent it out to 4 different publishing companies, and I got back 3 offers, 1 rejection.
Yeah. What did that feel like?
That was my question. Well, one of my questions.
Amazing. Like, like the best validation in the world, and just like it was one of those moments. At the time, I was a single mom. I was living in the projects. I was working what would be considered a great corporate job. I was doing legal billing, making a decent salary. I was doing all right, but not as all right as I could have been. Yeah. But this was like a chance to not only elevate my family, but also to do what I'd always loved to do and get paid to do it, So that was just like one of those moments where you kind of pinch yourself. And then when the first copy came and I saw my name on the spine, I was just like, hallelujah, and all that. Yeah, and it still feels like that. I worry that if it ever stops feeling like that, I know it's time to stop, because every single time I get a new, like when I finish it, it goes off to print and it comes in, you get like an advanced copy, and I still get that thrill of, I can't believe I get to do this. You know what I'm saying? Like that, I hope that never leaves me.
That's good.
And it's a desire to want to keep impressing you, because if you like this, then I'm like, I can't let them down with the next one. Right. I gotta do that same thing, or come, elevate a little bit higher. So this is one of the reasons why I really enjoy this type of feedback, because it drives me to go harder.
And that's why I feel like if more people at least made time for what they were really passionate about. I know we all have to work and pay bills, but I just feel like there would be less miserable people in the world.
Oh my God, you're so
right. You did that.
You're so right, because there would be days, even before I got paid to do it, there would be days where I was working that 9 to 5, going through a breakup with some buster. The kids go up to bed, you know, after they finish their homework, and I would just sit down and write in a diary. And that release was like therapy. So the people who sing, and they sing, you know, to themselves, or the dancer who dances in their bedroom, or the artist who paints and nobody buys the painting. I get it, because it's just a release. And then when you get to release and others appreciate it, it's just like, you know, the angels are singing above.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Kikis, you're down.
So have your children read the book? And if so, like, what is their perspective on it?
My children, they love the fact that I write, but for my sons, it's often difficult when they get to the sex scenes.
Okay, and that's what I was trying to get into. Let's get into it.
Yeah. They struggle. When I started writing books, my children were in middle school and high school.
Oh, okay.
So when Criminal Minded, I think Criminal Minded was my third novel, came out. The first two were kind of tame in comparison, you know. Criminal Minded, I had, you know, cocaine kilos being moved up and down I-95 and shootouts and lots of sex and taboo sex at that, you know. And I remember my son came to me, he was like, Mom, what you know about, you know, all of this? I'm like, it's just fiction. I'm just having fun. So there are books they read and books that they don't. Single Black Female, I believe they all read, and we had some dialogue about that. My latest novel, Hold You Down, all of them have read, because I dared the boys to read it because I told them they would make them cry, and they didn't believe me. I won. Yeah. They pick and choose. My daughter reads all of them. In fact, she reads them usually while I'm writing them, and then once they come out, you know.
Okay.
Yeah. She's my ride or die.
Oh, sweet.
Well, you should have asked them, how do y'all think y'all got here? I know all about it.
Exactly.
I know all about it. Hello.
But I tell you, nobody wants to think of their mama like that.
Right.
My father, rest in peace, was the same way. He read my first novel and he said, baby girl, I could see that you can write. He said, but I would never read another one. He was like, congratulations, you're on your way. And I'll just collect them all and stack them on the shelf.
Because he ain't reading it.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a good question too. The hardest part really is carving out the time, because writing is something that you can do while you're sitting in the house with everyone, and they think that means you're available and free. But I'm really in a zone. Like, I could be sitting here and I'm physically here, but mentally in the story. So it's often hard for them to understand that, you know, I can't talk to you right now.
Do you ever have moments where you start and then you say, oh, well, I don't want to do that, or just take that part out, or let's not, you know, put that in there and add this and, like, you know, edit things that you wrote already?
Absolutely. I'll change the ending a trillion times before I decide on what. Like with Single Black Female, I really struggled with the ending, you know. Originally, I'll be honest, I wrote it. Has everybody finished it?
We haven't read it yet. We're not peeking.
All right. Good thing I asked, because I was about to be, there's a Black Lives Matter kind of police encounter in the story with one of the characters' son, because the story really is about these women, but you can't really talk about women without talking about their children and their brothers and their ex-husbands and all of those things. So one of the sons is 16 years old. He's tall as Kobe Bryant. You know, he's got the Colin Kaepernick afro, but they're affluent enough to live on the white side of town, you know. But so there's a neighbor who decides that he must not belong here. You know, one of these things doesn't go here. And there's an encounter. And I had written that encounter in a very dark way. I had the outcome. I think it would have really triggered Black readers at a time where we were dealing with Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, etc. I just felt like we didn't need that in our entertainment as well.
Okay.
So I rewrote the ending in a different way, and I'm glad that I did because it left room for hope.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I changed my mind a lot.
but you know, like Geminis, it's hard for us to stick to one thing.
Exactly.
And the worst
Because
thing,
our minds be all over the place.
Right.
It's just be like, I want to put everything on here, but I can't. And I know I can't.
The worst thing sometimes you could give us is more time.
Yes.
We'll never make a decision.
Oh my goodness.
But
and I'm so grateful for my editor. Shout out to Monique Patterson.
Yeah.
We've been working together. Out of the 12 books I've written, she's been my editor for 10 of them. And Monique keeps me, she's like, girl, I need that book by February 1st or not out next year, you know?
Yeah.
And I need that. We Geminis need that kind of deadline. And also the honest feedback, the unfiltered, you know, girl, I love it. But around chapter 3, it gets a little slow. You know, I need to understand why he's doing this. What's the reasoning behind that? And when you get a team like that, it's just gold. You know, you have to trust someone else's process, I think, as a creator.
That was one of my questions, and you already answered it. No, but it's good. Like, if some people say they don't want honest feedback, and I think for the three of us, it makes us better friends because we could be in the group chat with this going on. And Casey might give me a point of view that I wasn't thinking about, or Kiki might, or if you know Kiki got a question on, like, where if somebody falling, we're not gonna let you hit the flow.
Exactly.
And it's through honesty. It's not because I want to see you feel bad, but I don't want you to make a decision that you know is not going to help you in the long run. These two right here, when I talk about like pushing yourself and leveling up. Like they got their houses last year in the nick of time.
Yes.
And I am so happy for them because like life is going life and you get in a position where you just feel stuck. But if we keep encouraging each other, it keeps up the momentum. So
but you also have to be open to it. And that's what I applaud in you guys also, because some people take that as, you know, as criticism, as an attack. And it's not, if it's coming from a loving place. I don't appreciate criticism in the vein of, oh, I don't read hood books, so keep that away from me. If you haven't given it a chance, then you can't say that you don't like it. But if you read it and you have some feedback, I'm open to that all day. Tell me what you think, what you like, what you didn't like, because iron sharpens iron, and that's going to make me a stronger writer in the long run. Period.
Right. And I say it all the time. I feel like people say they want honesty, but they really don't. They want somebody to lie to them all day long.
Exactly.
And tell them that they this and that, and it's not the truth.
It's so true. And I don't want to call anyone's name out because I do hope to work with everyone successful and Black in Hollywood. Yes. But there are some people who get popular off of a formula, and then they just stick to it without allowing other people to really, they're not open to the feedback, you know. So they write, they direct, they produce the whole thing themselves. You know? And there's something to be said for having other voices in the room to say, no, let's use some good wigs this time, you know?
Right.
I knew you was talking about before you even talked about the wigs.
Listen.
Because they're great, but
right.
Use a little tweaking here and there.
Yeah.
Right. Casey, what you got?
So it's fun.
I got a few actually. So in the interview that you did on was it the 26er?
Yes.
On YouTube, you said that you went to college, but you didn't finish.
Correct.
With the success that you have right now, do you still have that urge to ever be like, you know what, I'm gonna just go back and finish just instead I finish?
Yeah. You know, sometimes I think about it because I was a great student and I really loved to learn. And I really loved college. Had the circumstances been different, I certainly would have gotten my degree. But years ago, I sat with my publisher and I asked, because there are in every field, there are snobs, so we get the book snobs, particularly Black book snobs, who'll be like, oh, you write urban fiction, and then if you don't have a degree on top of it, they're like, oh, and you don't have a degree in literature and, all of that. So there are times where I have said, maybe I want to go back to school and get a degree. My publisher said to me, why? She was like, you're going to get the degree, but you're doing what people go to school to get the degree to do.
Right.
Yeah.
So she said, if you get it, it would just be for bragging rights so that in certain circles you could say, yeah, I have one. But really all you have to say is published, and it shuts the whole conversation.
That's true.
That's a fact.
That's true.
Maybe one day, if I do, it would be to get a degree in something I really, really am passionate about, like not necessarily English lit, but like history. I'm fascinated by history. And maybe when my grand divas go to college, I may tag along with them. They get a kick out of that.
So my question for you is, in your opinion, why do you feel like school books for like teenagers aren't changing? And if they did change from like the Shakespeare, the Beowulf, and the Scarlet Letter, those boring books,
right?
I like the Beowulf actually.
You did? It was dry, and
I like stuff like that. So yeah.
So for you, like, what authors, if they took books and authors now, do you think would help the generation of today?
Oh, now that's a good one.
Yeah.
I definitely believe this, that when you get a platform like writers have, especially in any age, I think we have a responsibility to depict what's going on in our time. So 100 years from now, if somebody picks up a Tracy Brown novel, I hope that I've done a good job of showing what it was like in the Black experience in the 80s, in the 90s, in modern times. Tupac said that this is his report, that he's a journalist, he's a hip hop journalist, and his lyrics were his report. And I really feel the same about the books that I write. So I think if you look at it through that lens, there are so many Black authors nowadays who should be required reading for these kids, particularly as it relates to the history of the civil rights movement. Like, I feel like this generation is so far removed from the struggles of what our parents and grandparents had to go through that they take it for granted. They throw the N-word around, they're all about flexing and flossing and wearing these designer labels. They fake woke,
Yes.
They don't have knowledge of self. And some of the books that I've read, like James Baldwin, for instance, could replace Shakespeare, in my opinion, easily, and much more relevant to what's happening right now. Like he's the spook who sat by the door, how Black men were seen and are still seen in large part. I think The Coldest Winter Ever did a great job of depicting.
We read that one.
We did.
Yes. For me, that book was the first time. I was an avid reader growing up, and just like Casey, I loved The Count of Monte Cristo, Shakespeare, a lot of the classics, I ate them up. I would read anything as long as it was interesting and caught my attention.
Exactly.
Tolstoy, all kinds of stuff. But then when I read The Coldest Winter Ever, it was the first time I read a book that felt like, I know these people. I know Rita, I know her father, her mother, the sisters, the neighbors. Like I felt seen, And I think there's a power in that, you know, and I think a lot of white kids and even Asian kids can see themselves in the literature that is assigned in schools, and it's a struggle for Black kids to see. So you know, I think as long as it's age appropriate, you know. I read something or maybe it was on Instagram, I think somebody was saying that they were appalled by the content of certain books in their child's high school. And at first, when you listen to the content of it, it was like, you know, incest, rape, all these things. And I realized they were talking about Sapphire's push. And I read that in high school. You know what I mean? So, and it wasn't such a shock to my system. It depends on the demographic, where they're from. I don't think they should read it independently necessarily. It should be guided as a class discussion. Oftentimes parents will come to me and ask me, can their kids read it? And I say, it really depends on your child. How well versed are they in life? And this might be something you want to read with them and talk about it together.
And also it's like, what's in those books is not like it was never happening. It has happened for generations and generations.
Shakespeare too.
Now it's kind of like we just want to talk about it because we want to prevent it, not we want to talk about it to tell them to do it. And I'm a parent, Kiki's a parent, and I'm like pro, like straightforward, direct, the truth. And so my thing is like, I don't want my daughters in the middle of a conversation of someone plotting on them and them not knowing the language. And so when I have books that might be cool for, you know, my 9-year-old to read, she's always been reading. She'll read my novels. She could read your book.
I love it.
And you know, like even like body wise, like I talk about, you know, my body. I talk about the fact that, all right, you passed 8. Okay. Now you're gonna keep this in your backpack.
This is what's coming. Exactly.
So many people don't want to talk about that with their kids.
Have that conversation.
What are you helping? What are you
not
helping?
Talking about it doesn't make it go away.
Right.
So, and I think there's such power. Your daughter's gonna trust you because you made it easy to speak freely about topics that are so taboo, I'm sure, to many of her friends with their parents. So that's awesome.
Chantal is an excellent girl mom, I must say.
Well, thank you.
I love it.
You know,
I say it all the time, boo.
They be checking me. They always be checking me.
But that's good. It's good. It's good. Mine check me too, and I'm like, you right.
Would you say when people assume that writers are very like to themselves and just dry or just vague, and I'm just like, would you call yourself an introvert only or an extrovert? Because I feel like I'm both.
Okay, we're Geminis.
Yes.
Right? So Kendrick Lamar, another Gemini, said it best. I'm an antisocial extrovert.
Oh.
So I'm extroverted. If you see me out, I am having a great time. But I'd rather you not come over here and talk to me. Like, just let me be here having my fun. Like, I really do enjoy my alone time. I like to people watch. Like, I'm the type that will be in a crowd, in a crowded place, but by myself. You know, that's my favorite energy. Like being in a park setting where there's a lot of stuff going on, people selling hot dogs, kids playing, couples having dates, girlfriends having conversations, and just me. You know?
So question, when you do that, because I do this, when you people watch, do you come up with your own stories for them in your head? Like, her name is Sherelle, and she just broke up with her boyfriend. So she's talking to her homegirl about how he just did this and that the other night. And how she let him have it over the phone and through text, and how she sent screenshots from Instagram, Twitter, and all the other different little stuff like that.
Yes, guilty as charged. I also make my watching that couple's not really into each other. Like, they got another 5 years. Like, he's not even listening to her. She's talking to him. He's looking over there, you know. So that kind of, it helps me develop. So I think sometimes when you're reading, it's important to make the scene realistic, especially I think women have a hard time writing dialogue that men would actually say, right? So when I read a romance written by a woman, for instance, it's usually like the man says something like, the smell of you drives, something like that. And most dudes don't talk like that. It's what we wish he would say, but what he's really going to say is, you smell good.
Right.
That's it.
That's it.
Simpler than that. Right. So a lot of that comes from me being in these crowded places and just watching how other people interact. I'm the girl who be at the bar by herself with my laptop or a notebook, just observing, surveying the scene, having a great time.
I like that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. I'm like that too.
Yeah.
well, we're not like, what you doing this weekend? We out and about. We will plan a brunch in advance, and it's just like a few of us that get together, and then we out and we got things to do. We're not trying to lounge around each other's house all day,
Hello.
And I think that is the truest friendship. Like I cannot see you for weeks, and we can pick up where we left off.
Right.
I think today, people have this illusion of what friendship is supposed to look like because of reality TV.
Exactly.
When none of these women like each other.
They wouldn't be getting together and going on all these trips together either if it wasn't a check and production wasn't paying for it. So
exactly. But it makes for good TV though. So.
It does, and I tune in faithfully. Y'all watch Potomac? Did you see the latest episode?
Yes.
I didn't. I haven't seen it yet.
Candace wouldn't be hanging out with Ashley if they weren't getting paid. That's all.
They sure wouldn't. They sure wouldn't. And Karen wouldn't be around none of them.
Exactly. I love it. I'm about to be the fourth podcaster.
But like this is what the podcast is. So when we do the podcast, we'll do like just like it sounds like you listening to a phone call with us coming in, and we'll decompress from our adulting, right?
Okay.
And then we'll jump into the book just a little bit to review it, but we're not like reading it verbatim because we want everybody that's reading along to have their own experience. But we'll review it, and then we'll get back into like what are our concerns. And then that's it. It's like a real. Let's get together for this book. Let's talk about what I'm thinking about and go back to our lives. And that's it.
I love it.
Yeah. What you got, Kiki?
What do you think draws people in to reading your books? Because when I chose this book, I Googled like juicy books. Like I typed that. I typed it in the Google search, and of course a whole bunch of books came up, right? But when I read the back of it, that's kind of what like drew me in. So before people even see the author or they see the title and they read the back of the book, like what do you think makes people say, I want to read this book?
I hope it's that the plot line, the character description makes them see themselves or see a reflection of something they are dealing with in their own lives.
I definitely did.
On the back of this book, it kind of talks about each of the women and what they're going through, and then it alludes to something happening that kind of sets things in motion. And that's what I look for. It's either intriguing mystery or suspense or something that makes me want to know more, or it's me something that I say, oh, okay, well, that sounds like something, I could really sink my teeth into. So I hope that's what they see, is like kind of a reflection of our times.
Right. I know I could relate to maybe 3 of the characters, except the married one, but I do hope to be married one day. So I probably could relate to her too.
Claim it.
What you got, Casey? What you got?
So when Kiki picked this book and it was Single Black Female, I was like, oh, I saw a movie on Lifetime called Single Black Female.
Yes.
So I was like, is this the author for the book? And then I was like, I saw the movie and I was like, wait, so this is just a Black version of Single White Female.
Exactly.
So with your books, how do you make sure that yours are original to Tracy and how they give Tracy Brown energy versus, oh, this sounds like
Yes.
a Jerome Dickey book. This sounds like an Elin Harris book. Like this sounds like somebody else.
Right. It's very difficult to set yourself apart. So I love that question. One thing I'm intentional about is I don't read other authors in my similar genre. So, and I do that especially while I'm writing. Lately, I'm writing constantly. I used to write maybe one book a year. Lately, it's 2. And so I have far less time to read. And so when I do, usually not Quan or, Ashley Antoinette, who are great, I mean, fantastic writers, but I just don't want to mimic their style. I caught myself doing that one time with Criminal Minded. I was such a fan of Shannon Holmes. He wrote Be More Careful and Bad Girls, and he was just one of my favorite writers. He would write the slang out phonetically, and I thought that was genius. Like, why am I expecting them to know how to say Shaolin? I could spell it in the way that I want them, So I caught myself doing that, and it didn't feel authentic to me, And so I tried not to pick up the elements of other writers in my field. If I happen to read some poetry and the rhythm of the prose influences my writing fiction, then I don't necessarily mind that, but I don't want to mimic anyone else verbatim. And I do want to stand apart. I think especially in Black books nowadays, and a lot of it I have to blame on the publisher. It's just like Bad Boy in the 90s. They saw that Puffy could take an old song and remix it and throw a girl on the hook and a rapper hit, That's all they wanted them to do. So once the publisher saw that if you got a bad bitch and a gangster, plus some drama, some sex, gunplay, a hit. So that's what they started expecting us to do all the time. And I'm with Geminis, I have to keep saying, I can't be cookie cutter. I have to challenge myself. I want to write something else. While everybody else is writing about the hustle, what about the crackhead in the corner? Let's talk about that person. Let's talk about the old drunk who, can't get off the street corner. Those elements, what about the kids? What about the mother who's worried about her son out there? Like, there's other angles to come at in that same community. The ways I try to challenge myself. So like a little glimpse into what I'm working on now, I had an idea of what if a hood chick's body showed up and the police had to figure out who killed her.
Right.
But nobody's really done that in this genre.
Or want to do it in real life.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So that
was one of my questions.
Myself. Yeah.
That was one of my questions. But do you ever feel like the publishers be trying to push like certain narratives on you or just us? You writing something that would only cater to our group of people?
I think it has more to do from a monetary standpoint. This is what works. This is the formula that sold 1 million books for Superhead. So we want Superhead Junior.
Yeah.
This is what sold 1 million books for Terry McMillan. So we're looking for Terry McMillan Jr. And it's just, it's laziness, But when you come with a new idea with a formula that hasn't been tried out yet, all they see is potential loss. And to their point, it hasn't always worked for me. With Boss, Boss was, I think, my 8th novel, 8th or 9th. And I wanted to, instead of writing about a drug dealer, a girl, I wanted to write about a woman who's running a magazine. She's editor-in-chief at this Black magazine. And her boss is a Black man, like a Bob Johnson kind of billionaire. And their families were connected in some twisted way. So the guns and the drugs and the violence are there, but it's kind of a backstory to the the front story was this, corporate climate, and it was one of my least sellers.
Because people like drama. People are just like,
exactly. You know what the feedback I got, which again, it's important to listen to your readers, because my readers said, I can't identify with no chick walking around in Louboutin 7 days a week. Ain't got that kind of money. I'm not living on Fifth Avenue. They couldn't see themselves in her, and if they had stuck it out, they'd have seen that eventually. I take you back to her college days. She starts out in the hood. I'm giving you, but on the surface, it just didn't sound like it would appeal to them, and it just didn't sell well.
And now that's interesting, because you can't relate to her in a book, but you relate to somebody like that when you watch Love and Hip Hop.
Exactly.
Watch The Housewives, watch all these different reality shows, and even a lot of these scripted shows where these women are attorneys, doctors, and stuff like that. And you still Keisha working at TJ Maxx.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's interesting. I just, so I try to find that middle ground where I can keep the same audience, but kind of trick them into something else that they weren't expecting, So with Single Black Female, I think I did that. It starts out, you're reading about these 4 women and their sisterhood, their friendship, their arguments, their fights. And then some shit happens and it's like, whoa, all of that is like irrelevant now that this has taken place, And so in a way, it kind of takes you on this roller coaster that I think readers didn't expect.
So with the fact that you want to focus on the character and it being different by what's the expected, because I think even if you go to film, they're trying to keep repeating the same already given movie or show. Is that why you wanted to get into playwriting and getting it to film?
Yes. Because I think there's room for many different voices, There's room for Tyler Perry, room for Ava DuVernay, room for Spike Lee, all with different points of view. I've yet to see, which I'm hoping that space is being held open for me, our stories really told to a wide audience, because I think that if you give it the shot, it's not a Black story, it's a family story, it's a community story, it's a story about life and love and struggle and triumph and all of those things. So yeah.
Do you think your sister challenging you with all of those books when she was away at college, does she feel, or did you have a discussion now that you're a woman, you got your own family, your career, like, thank you for challenging me with those books because it just strengthened my love for reading or gave me more windows for how I can write? Did you guys ever have like a conversation about that?
Absolutely. I've thanked her, and I every opportunity I get when someone asks me my origin story, it's impossible to talk about how I became Tracy Brown, the writer, without first speaking about how my sister instilled in me. It just became a passion and a love for reading. And at the time, this is why I'm so in awe of God, because sometimes you don't realize the seeds that are being sown and the steps that are being taken towards a greater picture. So at the time, I just felt like, okay, it was the 80s. My mother wasn't letting me go outside to play because there was so much going on outside with gunfire and crack and everything. And I'm stuck in the house. My sister sent me this box of books to read. It felt like I was the only one on the planet doing that. Everybody else outside pop locking and breakdancing and having a good old time. They listening to Run DMC. I'm in the house with the radio and a book, but it really did, it planted an amazing seed, and it allowed me to become what I think is really important as a good writer, is to be an avid reader. So I know what I like. I know what I want to, what draws me in, and none of that would be possible if it weren't for my oldest sister. Like, I remember being 3 or 4 years old. She started with the word AT, A-T. And she would just put a B in front of it and say, now, what does that spell? And send me over to the corner. I come back, bat. And then she'd take the B away and put a C, little things like that from 4 years old to sitting with me and just, challenging me about how to tell time. Like, it's so important with children. You just never know what you, and anyone, like I said about the lady when I came off stage and she said, you should write a book. The seeds you sow in people's lives can just really take bloom, you know? God has shown me that over and over and over again throughout my life.
Love that.
Me too.
I love that. That reminds me of my sister, because my sister was the same way. My sister's 14 or 15 years older than me.
Mine's 12 years older, yes.
So when I grew up knowing her, we went to high school graduation, and after that, she was gone. She was in college.
Yeah, same.
And then when she came home from college, she would just pick me and my twin brother up, and she'll take us out. She'll take us to all these different things to experience all these different stuff. Like I had sushi for the first time with my sister. Yeah. I did all these different things with my big sister. So it was kind of like, you know, that people remember that kind of stuff. Yeah. And then it brings them up to being a more well-versed adult.
Exactly. And I bet you pay it forward the same way. Like I bet you recognize the children in your vicinity the same way that she recognized you, you know?
Exactly.
In the moment, I realized that, you know, I'm 6 and she's 18. She don't have to come hang out with me. You know, she took the time out to come do that, and it made me feel special even as a kid. So yeah.
But you know what's so crazy about what your sister did and how you was inside with books?
Yeah.
These kids now are reading like on a 4th grade level at an average. And even with all the texting and the stuff that they do back and forth, they can't spell.
Because you start to type the word, it types it out.
It types it for you, yeah.
And so we have like this generation that's just like, ooh, books. Or you know, they don't know how to talk to people. And it's scary because it's kind of like, well, we know they having babies, like whatever. Who's reading to those babies? And like, where are they going to be? And technology is basically outworking us. And so
the babies are on iPhones and tablets.
Right. And so for me, I made the girls like, you can only have your iPad on Saturday and Sunday.
Right.
You know, because I want you to search in a book. I want you to use a dictionary. I want you, like even my 9-year-old, she'll put captions on the TV so she can learn more words. Right. So I'm just like, we have to
Anya does that? I did not know Anya does that.
Anya is a true nerd, okay?
That is hilarious.
And
I knew Anya was a nerd when she liked when she liked video games like me. So
she was in the corner this morning on the game. She's like, I'm on my game. The bus is not here yet, but I want them to be in the kids' mind as long as I can. But with technology now, it's so hard.
It's trying to speed up the process,
and the way our parents work is kind of like, well, just give them the iPad, give them this so they're not bored. It's just like your house should be like a home you want to discover things in.
Absolutely.
Not give me my iPad so I can sit on the couch and not enjoy my home. And so writing and just creating period is what people need to be comfortable in. And I'm glad you found that and still figured out a way to be a mom and still figured out a way to be you and still figured out a way, okay, I'm gonna still pay these bills too, but I'm gonna fuel my passion. And a lot of people forget that in the mix.
Yeah, it's one of the things I'm really grateful for, because I think it's easy for us to get lost in the role of wife, mother, whatever that is, uncle, you know, brother, son, and lose what drives you. Like, what is it that you like to do? You know, what do you enjoy for yourself? And it could be something as we talked about, as simple as singing, dancing, writing, sewing, you know, whatever that coloring, whatever that thing is that you do that brings you peace. You need that, because we pour so much, and that's the theme of Single Black Female, is that we pour so much of ourselves into others. That, you know, you can almost forget to fill up your own cup. Yeah. And if we don't do it for ourselves, sometimes you need your sister girls, your circle of friends to do that for you. You know.
I struggle with that so much.
Yeah.
Still to this day.
Be like, Kiki, you want me to take Kobe?
We already told you. You got babysitters over here. Drew would take Kobe. He loves Kobe.
Isn't even the problem though. I think it's just like Kobe is asleep right now. He went to bed at 7:30. And I just have no idea what to do with my life after we get off this, this Zoom. So I don't think it's him. I'm just trying to find like a healthy balance with working. I have 2 jobs. Mommy.
No, correct that. You have a job and you have a business.
Bam. There it is. Mommy, trying to take care of myself, gym, eat right, entertain, social life, date, get back to me pre-COVID and all that stuff. Still grieving from that. So it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It is a lot, but it's very important, even if it's, like you said, after this call is over and the baby's asleep, what is the thing that you can do for yourself to remind yourself of who you were before you became a mom, before you had the business and the 9 to 5, And for me, that was escaping into a corner in a dimly lit room, especially on a rainy night, and literally a marble notebook and a pen. One of the exercises they taught me in college was to do this thing called free writing. And then I saw something that said, with the flow of a pen, the thoughts flow forth. So she would have us put a timer on for like 2 minutes. And for that 2 minutes, you couldn't lift that pen off the paper. Even if you're writing, this is dumb, I don't got nothing to say, I don't have anything to write. Eventually that turns into, what am I going to make for dinner tomorrow? Why am I always thinking about what I'm going to make for dinner tomorrow? I have a million things on my mind. And that's when it starts to come forward. And by the end of that 2 minutes, you got something to work with.
Right.
Even a few moments of meditation. Start with 3 minutes, then increase to 7, then 11. Just silence with yourself, like to give yourself, literally, if you're anything like me, because your life sounds a lot like mine, as at the time that I started writing the books, I was a single mother of the children. I was working a 9 to 5. I was writing at night, so 95 to 98% of my day was being in service to other people, working for the boss, trying to dot all the I's and cross all the T's, being a mom.
Yeah.
So literally, if you could sit in meditation for 3 minutes, sometimes that's the only 3 minutes of the day you get to yourself.
I need more than 3 minutes, girl. But it's like I just have so much on my mind at one time. And Casey has always said, Rome wasn't built in a day. So you have to do this and then just take it one thing at a time. But I was like, okay, it all has to get done today. And then I'm driving myself crazy, lost my edges and everything because I'm like stressing myself out. And it's just really extra and it don't take all that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it only, what's crazy, as you start to achieve your goals, it doesn't get easier. That plate gets fuller. That, the 24 hours gets more consumed, and so you have to really be intentional about taking the time for self and carving out the time to remind Kiki of who you are and what you enjoy, and just spend some time alone in your own space and your own thoughts. Like I said, even if it's just for that 3 minutes a day. So I really thought it was going to get easier once the kids got grown, but no.
More problems.
No, it does not. Because then the thing, somebody said, be careful what you pray for, because I prayed that I would be, let my career take flight. Let me get calls from all these celebrities and let me write for TV. And then when it starts to happen and people want it now, are you going to rise to the occasion, or are you going to say, oh my God, I'm so overwhelmed, So really, now is the time where, you're being prepared for that bigger stage. So listen to Casey. Rome was not
Love it. What you got, Casey?
Shit, I done forgot because we just having a conversation now. So it's like
right. A whole therapy session.
I know. Okay, I got one. So with writing, how do you know when your writing expectations are realistic?
I never know. I never know, and the good part about it is that the team around me, my agent, my publisher, they never make me feel like I can't do anything. Like if I come to them and I say tomorrow, I want to write about gangster aliens who come down from Mars and they take over all the, they'll be like, you can do it. Everybody can do it. You can do it.
And let me say this. We tried to read Lovecraft Country, the book. It ain't nothing like the show.
The show was excellent, right?
Excellent. And we all mad about it, right? But the book was so dry and from a whole different perspective. We just like,
I was lost.
We can't get through this.
I was lost in the book.
Especially I was so upset because I love the show. Mm-hmm. And then I'm reading the book and it just made me mad because I'm like, damn, I'm thinking back to the time when my grandparents were alive and they were growing up and they were going through all that different stuff in the South. And I'm just kind of like, why are we reading?
Mm-hmm. And see, I didn't see the show. So I'm really trying to go off of my imagination with the book. And I was just so lost.
Yeah.
Treat yourself to the show.
Yeah. The show is like the perfect bridge of history, blackness, and sci-fi. Just coming together in sci-fi. And so many writers and just producers try to push Black people out of sci-fi. Like,
yes.
No.
Exactly.
So it was so good. And so I'm just like, man.
Yeah.
Can you talk about your new book? I wanted to give you space to talk about your new book, even though we're not reading that one for this season.
Okay.
I wanted
I got it right here. I came ready.
Yes.
This one is the perfect follow-up to Single Black Female. So while I was writing Single Black Female, I did a bunch of like book club Zooms. And I found that it was mostly women, groups of women, and they all found they had similar sisterhoods, whether it was like an actual sister or it would be, sometimes the book club itself was a sisterhood, or it would be, at the hair salon, we get together and or once a month, me and my knitting circle, we get together. And I realized Black men don't really have the same kind of circle. My sons, I use them as examples a lot. So my ex-husband and I divorced. And so now when my sons go and hang out with their dad, they be fronting, It's like, how's everything going? Oh, great. Just bought the new car. Just got a promotion. Yeah, I'm dating a girl. They're not talking about the colonoscopy, the write-up they got at the job. They're not talking about the disappointment that they didn't get the job that they wanted, because I think when men get around each other, there's this bravado of, I got it all under control. I got this. And they don't really hear the truth of their fears and their hopes and their all of that. So the goal when I started writing this book was to dig into the psyche of Black men and to try to get them to realize that a lot of their actions are rooted in guilt, shame, frustration, unaddressed childhood traumas and things like that. So I start off writing about the mothers, Mercy and Lennox, and they're two sisters who are raising Black boys side by side in the 80s. So it starts off in the crack epidemic, and then the sisters' choices lead their lives down a particular path, and the story shifts to the point of view of their sons. And it's in that second half of the story that the two cousins are really living in the wake of their mother's decisions. And in the end, I think they have a very poignant conversation that when I wrote it, I cried while writing it, because I felt like if more brothers could have these kind of conversations of, I missed out on not having my father, or, I wish that I didn't disappoint my mother. Like there's not really too many venues where they feel safe to say that without being called a punk
Right.
Or man up, it starts in childhood. A little girl falls down, we pick her up. Oh, baby, what happened? Little boy falls down, we tell him, stop crying. You ain't no punk, man up. But what does he do with that? What does he do with that anger, the frustration, etc.? So that's what Hold You is about. It's about family ties and Black male pain, trauma, and triumph.
And I like that you said that, because I feel like as a community, we don't make that space available for Black men to be sensitive or have a feminine side without saying like they're always, you got to be gay.
Right.
Exactly. I had a conversation recently with some girlfriends of mine. Girlfriend of mine has been in a marriage for 20 plus years. And the conversation turned to, do you allow your man to cry? And she said if she came home and she looked over and she saw her man crying, she's like, what is he, a punk? And I just thought that was so ironic. There was a brother there, and he said, well, you're supposed to be his backbone. Go over there, ask him what's wrong, cry with him. Like, and I just wish that there was, like you said, more of a space for vulnerability in our brothers. I don't think we allow for much of that.
And then when they do, sometimes if you with the wrong woman, she go throw it back in your face, and then he will never do that again. It's grown men in their 30s and 40s holding things against women from kindergarten,
from their childhood.
And then me and my boyfriend talk about this all the time.
Yes,
because with our homegirls, they be like, oh, we can't find a man, this, that, and the third, or this guy's a dog, he does this and he does that, and we was like, look. All it takes a man is one time for a woman to break his heart. And he's going to remember that for the rest of his life.
Exactly.
And every woman is like, oh, she ain't shit, she a bitch.
Right.
I don't trust him. Yeah.
Exactly. That's so true, Casey.
Yeah.
True. Yeah.
Well, when my son falls, I pick him up and console him and pat him and all that stuff. But my fear is that when he gets out into the world, he won't get that same type of treatment. So I feel like I still have to prepare him for that, but not like, putting him down like, oh, you a punk or don't cry and stuff like that. So I'm trying to navigate through that.
I speak about that in the story. There's a character, Judah, who is not gangster. He goes to school. He just wants to do the right thing and come home, but he's constantly challenged in the neighborhood. Constantly challenged by other boys, what to challenge his manhood, and it gets to a point where you start to believe yourself to be a coward.
Right.
When it takes more courage to stand against the tide than it does to follow it. So, it's just, and there's a point in the story where my son read it and he came to me and he said, Ma, thank you. Because I felt like that before. I recognize that. And then what are we supposed to do in situations like that? So it got us talking,
Right.
And I think those are the conversations that we really need to have in our community more often.
Right. Because unfortunately, I can't go beat somebody up every time. Like I would like to do that. But...
Oh, man.
Well, call me, girl. Your
I know you don't play those games when it comes to the baby.
No.
Well, Kiki, call me when your arms get tired. I'll step in for you and fight.
Listen. I'll send Ari over there. Ari be like, which one?
Oh. Right. Like who did it? And where the parents at?
Right. But Single Black Female will take us into March.
Okay.
And if life happens, maybe April. But we are definitely looking forward to reading it. It's a bi-weekly podcast. So we read and we give 2 weeks to read more, and then we go over it. So if you want to catch it, I post it up like next day. I edit it and I post it up next day, and it's on the podcast app. Any podcast app you can find. So at Page We On Bih. And
love the name.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who came up with it?
Casey.
It wasn't me.
Because it became like this thing where I would be like the main one, like, okay, Chantal's gonna have this, she's gonna have that.
I love it.
So Casey be like, so what page we on Bih?
By far the most creative name I've heard. So I was like, oh, they could sign me up for that. I'm definitely for that.
But thank you so much for coming on here. And I hope
thank you.
Back in as you talk about it. I'll be back to discuss the plot with you guys. I can't wait for you to sink your teeth into these.
Okay.
This was fun.
I can't wait.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tracy. We really appreciate you.
Yes.
Guys, I love you guys. I appreciate your energy and your support and all of that. Thank you for having me.
You are welcome.
Thank you for having us.
You have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right,
good night.
Bye.